UBN Radio and discovered our quality talk shows. It's time to spread the word to friends, family, and the universe. 24 hours of music and talk. Radio without limits. That's why people keep coming back for more. That's ubnradio.com.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you to all of our listeners and viewers across this vast stretch of land of ours in our country and around the world. Welcome to another edition of Focus with Ron Frierson. I'm your host, Ron Frierson. Today, I'm doing a solo because my frequent co-host, Woody Wilson, is out somewhere doing something he's not supposed to be doing, but we miss him around here. Wherever you are, Woody, have fun. I usually start this show off with my rant, and this rant I have is going to be a little bit different today because I'm going to speak on an issue that I promised we would not lose sight of, and that issue is what's going on in Flint, Michigan. And so today, what I'm going to do, instead of having my own customary singular rant, I'm going to use this time to interview our friend, Mr. Quincy Murphy. Quincy, are you on the line?
Yes, I am.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, and good afternoon to your listening audience.
Thank you. Now, before we get started, I want to kind of lay it out for us and for our viewers and listeners. There's a lot going on in the world right now. We're in the midst of a presidential election campaign. Primaries not even gotten to the general portion of the election yet. And just as I anticipated, attention of the media has scattered. Something can be very hot today, and then it's out of the news cycle tomorrow on a national basis. And this crisis that we dealt with in Flint, Michigan, that we're still dealing with, as we'll go through here in a minute, is something that I promised from the beginning that will always keep in the fore. It's something I will always keep at the top of our list because this is something that we cannot forget. We can't allow for an American city to allow poison to infiltrate the water supply and kill the hopes and aspirations and affect the health of hundreds of thousands of our American citizens. And if it could happen in Flint, it could happen in your area. So I'm going to do my part, and everyone listening to this, you need to do your part as well. All that being said, we got Quincy Murphy on the line. He's a community activist. He's a supremely smart brother. And not only is he smart intellectually, but he's doing stuff about it. He's taking that trip to D.C. to talk about what's going on in Flint. And we're just pleased to have you, Quincy.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to be on your show today.
Okay. Well, okay. So tell me what the latest is. What's going on up there?
Well, as of last week, the Attorney General of Michigan filed charges on 3 individuals that altered the documents dealing with the Flint River water that the residents of Flint were using prior to us going back to Detroit up under the emergency manager and the governor.
So you said people were found to alter official documents to kind of protect themselves or to protect the power establishment? What is it?
They in the criminal charges that were filed against 3 individuals. One guy worked at the water plant. I think 2 other ones was from the DEQ. They one individual altered documentations dealing with the lead levels in the water treatment plant. Allegedly. Those were some of many charges that they were charged with.
So
also,
these
are
these
pending charges on other individuals that will be sought in the near future. We were hoping that the governor got charged because he is the guy who signed off on the contract to have us using Flint River water that had us not using corrosion control treatment in the Flint River water to stop the lead from leaching in the water.
And these charges are all criminal charges, correct? What you're talking about? Okay. And I'm not surprised that the governor's not being brought up on criminal charges because of the power structure and the way things work. I'm not too surprised on that. But so what I want to do too is that, and I want to kind of carry forth with this. So now the government is finally, or the Justice Department or the law enforcement community has finally started to bring down criminal charges. These people that are being charged criminally, are these like low-level scapegoats, or are these people that really had an effect and the power and the negligent ability or responsibility to make sure that this water situation never occurred in the first place? Are they people of power, or are they scapegoats, low-level scapegoats that's just taking the blame for the higher-ups?
I would say that they're taking the blame for the higher-ups.
Okay.
And I really believe that these were smoke and mirrors is what I would call them. So to come and file charges on individuals who reported to the governor, you cannot tell me that when this water crisis took place, when we was up under the emergency manager, that the governor did not know anything. And then from these emails that they've been releasing, there were a lot of behind the scenes. They really wrote the city of Flint off. Urban cities like Detroit, Ben Harbor, Highland Park, Pontiac, all these cities where predominantly African Americans were, they came in and took on what we call the emergency manager and Public Act 436, because we repealed Public Act 4. So after we repealed that and we got enough signatures, we had to go out and get, I think it was like 700,000 signatures to repeal Public Act 4. Once we got those signatures and we overturned that, he created Public Act 436. And what that Public Act 436 did was it allowed him to bring in emergency managers in predominantly African American communities.
Okay, so tell me this.
When he did that, he used he cut state revenue sharing first and said we can't handle our finances. Then turned around and came in and took over the city. Then went to the Flint River water because he wanted to save money. Then didn't want to pay the $100 a day that it would have cost to treat the water with corrosion control because he was trying to save money. And as a result, 12 people have died from legendary exposure to this water crisis.
Okay, tell me
Hundreds
this.
of kids and adults has been affected with lead.
Okay, Quincy, tell me this. So let's back up a little bit.
Okay.
So let's say, I'm from Michigan. I'm from the same area, and so that's why it holds near and dear to my heart. And we spoke about this earlier as well. So, do you think that there's a racial component to it, or is it just the economic conditions? I mean, because do they have an emergency manager?
I would say both, the reason why I would call it a race issue, because when Barack Obama became president in his first term, we quit voting across this nation, and we were supposed to still get out and go vote for our state senator, our state representatives, our congressmen, our governors. But a lot of us go out and vote only every 4 years. So when Barack Obama became president the first term, what they did was they went out and the Republicans kept the momentum going with the voting. So they got Republican governors, Republican senators, Republican states. They had the House. So once they got the House and the governor got the House, areas were predominantly African and took over those cities.
Yeah. You know, and you
But
have
yes,
a point
I
there.
do believe it's a race. It was a race issue.
Okay, so now, because the reason why is that I'm one of those guys that where race applies, I'm right there with you. But then I don't like to use that very often unless it's clear, because sometimes it can be a blurry line between race and economics for simple reason that sometimes if something affects an economically distressed community just by mere fact of the numbers, that sometimes more adversely affects minority communities when you're talking about economic distress. Now, all that being said, and it's true that most state houses and governors' races are at the state level, I should say, are Republican, and that's been the case. And there is true that the turnout for elections in lower and off presidential cycles, I should say, for senator or for representative that don't fall in, or even for, like I said, governors, gubernatorial races, they tend to fall off. And then with minority communities, we don't really come out to vote like we should. I hope that this entire thing that we're going through will tell everyone, minorities and people in general, to get out and vote for more than just the presidential race. We have to get out and vote for everything down ticket, everything that affects, especially your local and state governments. It's supremely important for us to get out and vote in those races. So when we were talking earlier, you were also telling me about the current status of the repairs. So what's happened in this? And it's been 2 years now, right? This is a 2-year anniversary of this entire occurrence. From then to now, with all the protests, with all of the media involvement, what sort of improvement or progress have we made in trying to make Flint whole again?
Okay, well, Monday was the 2-year anniversary of us switching to the Flint River water. Once we did that, we also there's been 35 replacement of lead lines. Let me explain what that is. Because of the corrosion control not being placed in the treatment of the water system, it corroded the lines going from the street to the house.
Huh.
So you got 3 things going on. You got galvanized pipe, you got copper pipe, and you got galvanized copper and aluminum.
Okay, galvanized pipes, copper pipes, and aluminum pipes. You have those 3?
So
Okay.
they don't have the data. It's 15,000 residents that are servicing through these lines.
Okay,
so they got to go
hold on a second, Quincy. 15,000 residents or 15,000 homes?
15,000 homes.
Okay, because that's a difference. Okay.
15,000 homes that they have to go out. Is 9,000 that they do not know what kind of lines in there. They have to replace those lines. So far, they've done 35. So you do.
Wait. Out of 15,000 homes and 9,000 on top of that 15, that they still have to determine what level of contamination they have or whatever, how the pipes have been affected. Out of all of that,
they got to figure out what kind of service line is going to the house. So they got to have someone come out to your home and look and see what kind of service line. They just did the mayor just did a town hall meeting here at Metropolitan Church on Tuesday, where they came and they showed the highest concentrated areas of the lead. They looking at least 5,000. So far, they done did 35. They got $2 million that the governor gave them, that they gave the governor to switch back to Detroit. So let me make this make sense. It costed us $12 million to switch back to Detroit Water. We had to put up $2 million. The Mott Foundation put $6 million. The state put $4 million, and we had to put $2 million. So we had to put $2 million of the money to switch back to Detroit that the governor messed up.
Okay,
So
okay.
the money that he gave us to try to fix this situation is the $2 million that we gave him.
Okay,
so that $2 million right there is earmarked, and that could do 500 lines.
Okay, Quincy. All right, let me back up a bit because you throwing a lot of numbers. I want to make sure that the audience and the viewers can keep up with this. So right now, essentially, I want to go back to the major impact of it. At least 15 homes, at least 15 homes right now have been tested, and the pipes need to be replaced. At least 15. Out of that, only 35.
Hold on, watch this. 5,000 homes we know need to service lines need to be replaced.
Okay.
Out of that 5,000, 35 homes have service lines have been replaced.
Okay, 45 out of the 5,000. Okay. All right. So
35, not 35. 35.
35 out of 5,000. After all this time.
From 2 years.
Oh my God. And then you're saying on top of that, there's the money that's been going towards this effort is money that basically the community put forward. No, so
the $2 million that the governor gave us back, that we gave him to switch to Detroit. That $2 million will do 500 service lines.
Oh man.
There's 5,000 service lines that we know need to be replaced.
So tell me this.
So if you do the math, if we only did 35, how long do you think it would take us in order to replace these service lines if we moving this slow?
Exactly.
We're moving like some turtles. The governor is moving like some turtles. So we trying to put demands on the governor to release more money so that we can get contractors out here and get people trained to get this stuff done. In the meantime, we are still bathing in bottled water, taking bird baths.
Oh my God! Tell me this. Listen, Quincy. Tell exactly.
So now people are getting frustrated.
Quincy, absolutely. And then on top of that, I understand that you guys are still paying water bills for water you can't use. Tell me about that.
The governor gave us $30 million to pay 65% of our water bill, not the service charge, not the sewer charge, not the other fee that is attached to the water bill, 65% of the water. So I'm going to give you an example. If you get a water bill, you got a sewer bill that you have to pay for, a disposal fee that you have to pay for, maintenance fees that you have to pay for, water fees that you have to pay for. So all those other fees are still having to be paid. And on the water fee, we have to pay 35% of that. And the governor gave us $30 million just to pay up to 55% of our bill for 2 years from the time that we switched. So 35% of the water that we still couldn't use, we got to pay for.
That in itself is criminal. Okay, let me bring this in a little bit. That in itself is criminal because the fact that you will have to pay anything for water that you can't use, you're paying for poison. I don't care whether or not you're only paying 35% of it. You're still paying for poison. And that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And that in itself is criminal. Now, tell me this. Some of the frustration has to be going to other places. How do they feel about the governor and even the federal government?
Well,
I mean, not the governor, but the mayor.
You know, Barack Obama will be here, the president, on Wednesday to talk about this water crisis and come and visit Flint.
And I'm sorry, I meant the mayor, not the governor, but the mayor. How are they feeling about the mayor? Do they think she's doing a good job?
The two things. The mayor is frustrated herself that she's not receiving the funding that she needs to be able to expedite what needs to happen. Then on the other hand, the residents are questioning donations that's coming into the city of Flint. Where is the money going? but people are donating, and the money is being restricted to certain things and not replacing pipes. Because a lot of people who donating, they don't feel like they should be donating to replace some pipes that the governor messed up.
Okay, I get it. And now tell me this. Now I'm gonna step back a little bit now, and I want to talk about the broader issues. So I get it in regards to the effect of this specific water crisis and what you guys are dealing with. I understand that, and I can hear it in your voice. I can hear the frustration, and I get frustrated and a knot in my chest when I think about it because, like I said, this is personal for me as well. Now, how is it affecting the community? Is crime going up? Because I heard something about one of the people who put in a lawsuit has been murdered, and someone else who worked at the water treatment plant has been murdered.
Well, there's been 9 murders. 2 young women were murdered. One of the young women, Shasha Bell, was part of the class action lawsuit on behalf of her daughter that was exposed to lead. One of the gentlemen that worked at the water treatment plant, he passed away all of a sudden. The guy who was the head of the water plant, he's been terminated because he's one of the ones that was charged, and he was the head of the water treatment plant. So now they done had to hire another worker that got to get up to speed on the chemicals. See, you also got to realize when the emergency manager came in, see, they get to slash and pension and all of that. So a lot of people that worked at the water treatment plant that was there for 20 and 25 years that could retire, they left there when the governor announced that he was taking over the city of Flint. A lot of those people who had those expertise at that treatment plant retired. And they retired because they was forced to retire because if they didn't, the governor with the emergency manager would have came in here and cut their pension. And that's what he did. So they lost a lot of their skill set in that department.
Well, that's a lot. That's a lot. And we both know that the the crime situation in Flint is Flint, Saginaw, Detroit, and we all know about that. But then this added stress on top of it, I don't think people around the country quite understand the pressure cooker that people are living within there when you can't from day to day even safely take a shower or wash your clothes or do the dishes, or in some cases you can't even have your hands in the water without using bottled water. I don't think we quite around the country can quite fathom something like that. It's almost third world and it's criminal. Quincy, like I said before, I'm gonna stay on top of this, and I'm gonna give you a call from time to time, and I want you to come on. And I pray for the day when I have you on the show when we can both speak and we're both feeling a little bit better in regards to the progress that we're making in the healing of the community. But until then, we need to keep the pressure on. And I know you're doing it from your end. And from my end, I'm going to do the best I can as well to keep the pressure on and let it stay out there. I don't care what else is in the news. We can worry about what's going on the other side of the planet, but we need to worry about what's going on in our own backyards in places like Flint, Michigan. And
That's right.
And I thank you very much for joining us, okay?
Thank you, and I appreciate it. You guys have a blessed night.
Same to you, my brother. Same to you.
All right, bye-bye.
Yeah. Everybody, that was Quincy Murphy out of Flint, Michigan. And most of the people many of the people that listen to the show, I should say, they know that I'm from that area, born and raised. And so this is a personal topic to me. And I primarily speak on geopolitics, stuff going on offshore, and the politics in regards to national politics and what's going on with the presidential race and things of that sort. But this is a canary in the coal mine. Let me tell you about Saginaw, Flint, and Detroit. At one time, this area in Michigan had the highest population percentage-wise of middle-class and upper middle-class African-American families. I remember as a kid when you can up and down the block. You would see, on let's say a Saturday morning, most kids like me would have to do the lawn. We had to use the push lawnmower, which is something people in LA don't know anything about. But we used to have to use the push lawnmower, or some people had the riding more. So we do the lawn. The ladies in the neighborhood would be talking to each other across the fence, talking about whatever. Most of the guys would be, the men, the dads would wash their cars. The kids are playing in the streets or doing chores. It was family. It was manicured lawns, nice cars, always American cars. You couldn't dare park a Honda or Toyota in a driveway back then. And it was a community. It was a hard-working community. We saw our dads and our uncles and our granddads getting up early in the morning to go to work at one of the automotive factories. We saw, we knew what shifts they were. We knew when people were leaving to go to work at 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon so they can be on second shift and work in the graveyard shift. But people worked. It was a tight-knit community. And somewhere in the 80s is when things started to take a turn. Many of my generation, I know a lot of people on my Republican friends, they love and revere Ronald Reagan. Well, I look at it a little differently, and maybe it was Reagan's fault, maybe not, but I just associate that administration with the downturn of many of the great things that came with my community. It seems like overnight, GM and the other automotive industry started shutting down plants in places like Flint and Detroit and Saginaw. And this is what we did. This is what we do. This is what we pride ourselves on. It's nothing to see a guy, a man walking in Saginaw or Flint with a UAW jacket on, a proud union member, or a guy walking with his green foundry suit on and his hard hat and his work glasses and his earplugs because of the sound that took place in those foundries. That's what we did, and that's what we know. And working on the line, it's what we did. And then that started to change, and it changed quick. It changed very quickly. And then it seems as if you want to add injury to insult, then drugs came on the scene. And drugs have always been there. Drugs are still everywhere, even more pervasive now. But drugs have always been around. But it seems like it went to an entirely different level. And it somehow affected the fabric of the community. And Flint, Detroit, and Saginaw never quite really recovered from that. Some places are doing better than others. Detroit had their huge downturn, but because Detroit is the major population base, for the simple fact of being the major population base, some parts of it can turn around a little faster. But places like Flint, Saginaw's become a little more diversified because its proximity to Midland and some other communities, and so they're getting off to other types of industries. But Flint was Buick City. That was the birthplace of General Motors, and it's no longer there. And it changes you. Most people put a lot of pride in what they do for a living. This is how you put food on the table. This is how you provide for your family. This is how you identify and show, in many respects, your worth. And when the desire is there, but the opportunity isn't, that becomes frustrating. It becomes frustrating. And then on the other end, if you hear some of the political talk, they would have you believe that, if you don't have a job, it's because you don't want a job. That's so not true. That's not true at all. Job fairs are plenty, but the types of jobs that were there before, they're just not there anymore. It's just not. So what are we going to do? I try to be a little solution based, but before we can find the solution, we need to understand the problem, where it comes from. And in my opinion, I've said this a zillion times on the show, so if you've heard this, you may think this is a broken record or that this is an old episode. But I think the key here is education. We've transformed as a society to an information-based, technology-based society and economy. We need to follow suit in regards to the education system, the healthcare system, and try to prepare ourselves for those jobs of the future. Now, it may not affect the current workforce as quickly as we would like, but if we want any sort of future for our children in that area, and for there to be a case where they, after they graduate or as they come through the education system, to stay in those communities, because the population continually dwindles. I'm a perfect case. I haven't lived home in years. I live in Los Angeles. I've lived in France. I've lived in Kansas. I've lived in Australia. But I haven't lived back home in Michigan. The opportunities aren't there the way they were in the past. So all that being said, if you want to keep people there, we have to fix the education system there. And this is something that from there we're going to extrapolate and just take it nationwide. And this is another thing I've said before. I don't care how many charter schools we have. I don't care how many private schools we have. The vast majority of the children in the United States will always go to public schools. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. There's no way around it. They will all go to public schools. So that tells me that the greater percentage of our population will be educated within our public school system. So if you want any way in the world to, quote unquote, make America great again, like one of the Republican candidates always says, it starts with preparing the future, preparing the students. Or else we're going to fall victim to what commonly occurs, which is a lot of tribalism, because that comes along with it, a lot of xenophobic and ethnocentric behavior, because this all comes with it. If you notice, if you move into higher levels of education, it tends to be a little more diverse. My life is a very diverse life. I have very diverse, close-knit inner circle, very diverse. But if you look at the economic circles, as we come down economically, people tend to become more tribal. You know, all of the poor African Americans move to a certain area. All of the poor Caucasians move to a certain area. All of the poor Latin Americans move to a certain neighborhood or something. And that's where you get the tribalism. And that within these different groups that have stresses put on them, the only thing they have in many respects, one other than the love of who they are, is the love for each other. But then if you add in the mix of poverty along with it, poverty raises the chances of violence and criminality. That's what poverty does. If we were to somehow find a way to reduce or eliminate poverty within our society, we probably wouldn't have as active of a judicial system as we have now. We wouldn't have as many packed prisons as we have now. And that's largely has to do with poverty, because many of the people, it's always going to be sociopaths. There's always going to be people that are crazy and nutso and they need to be locked up. But the vast majority of them are people that committed some sort of crime trying to put some money in their pocket because they were desperate. And if you've never been hungry, you don't know what you would do if you were hungry. There's no excuse for criminality, but there's an understanding of where it comes from. And that's what we need to work out. So I say all that to let my people in Flint and all these other distressed communities across the globe, really, that I hear you. And in regards to Flint, because I know Flint, you're always going to have a voice on this show. So I'm going to move on to something else. Excuse me. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Mr. Trump, who happens to be in town here. And if you saw some of the promos from this week's show, you will see that we need to take this man seriously. Now, I said that Mr. Trump is dangerous, and this is why he's dangerous. There's always been crazy people. You know, we know crazy people. In our personal lives and our families, in many respects, we know crazy people. And the thing about crazy people is that we can always kind of isolate them, you know, because we're just kind of dismiss them because we know they're crazy. But the dangerous ones are the ones that sprinkle in common sense, sprinkle in some truths so that a person that's not truly discerning, or a person that's willing to overlook certain things, will latch on to what those truths, no matter how sporadic or how infrequent they are, will latch onto those as justification for supporting this person without looking at the bigger picture. Because based on what I just said about Flint, Donald Trump is talking about making America great again. He's talking about keeping companies from moving offshore. And the weird thing about it is that I in my private life, I am one of those guys that helps companies globally. I'm a management consultant, and I have multinational clients and that want to move all over the planet. And so I understand that. But he's talking about putting America in a much stronger position so that companies would be less inclined to make these types of moves. I'm for that. Most people are for that. Does that mean I support Donald Trump? No. But it does, that kind of piques my interest, just that alone. Another thing is he's talking about our involvement in foreign wars. That doesn't sound like a Republican, but he says that, we don't need to be involved in nation building. He's against the war in Iraq. He said that there's a region of our world that's been riddled with violence and tribalism and hatred for one another for a long time. Why are we trying to make them a Western-style democracy? A lot of people agree with that, on both the left and right. A lot of people agree with that. So the fact that this man comes up with these truths that are wrapped within his supremely racist rhetoric, sexist rhetoric, and some of the other stuff he says, and he is so unapologetic, and he does have a level of charisma. He understands the camera. He's been before the camera. He's been in every tabloid. We've known him for years. He's a familiar face. I can see how some people would want to turn a blind eye to what he really could represent to the world and what he could do to our country. So in reality, let's look at a Trump world. Look at it. He mentioned us pulling out of or allowing Japan to cover their own defense and maybe even allow them to develop a nuclear weapon. Now, Japan is our ally, but over 60 years ago, they weren't, okay? And we struck them with a nuclear bomb, and a couple of them. That's not cool. And there are people that are alive today that were alive back then. It's a long time ago. It was back in the 1940s, but it happened. Okay? Now, all that being said, to let nuclear proliferation reoccur on the Pacific Rim when you have a powerhouse like China there, who's always at odds with Japan, have been historically for a very long time, when you have Taiwan, who we protect as our ally, and Taiwan is considered a rogue province by the Chinese Republic. When you think about the ongoing tensions between North Korea and South Korea, I don't know if we want to further militarize that area. It just doesn't make much sense at all. But in a Trump world, that's possible. Now, switch it over to the Middle East. Everything that we say and everything that the president says has a tendency to become policy. And that's one thing I really respect about President Obama. When he speaks, you can tell by his cadence that he really measures his words. He measures them and is very deliberate. He pauses sometimes as he speaks, and he's still made mistakes, but he pauses sometimes as he speaks because he understands that his words will resonate. If we had a President Trump, the way he speaks off the cuff, the way he takes a muscular stance as if he himself would have to go and arm wrestle and box Vladimir Putin, it's not very smart. because he is not actually the person that's going to go over there and fight the battle. It will be our troops, not him. Okay? So he will send people. I'm not saying he would, but there's a possibility because of the things that he says, he will put us in danger in other parts of the world. He could start an international incident by saying something that he should not have said, and given his, his behavior since he's been on the national stage in regards to politics, he has not wanted to walk anything back. He hasn't wanted to apologize. This is worrisome. This is very worrisome. And if you look at Costa Mesa, he was here speaking at some sort of Republican function, and Costa Mesa is Orange County. And out of the LA area, Orange County tends to have a lot more Republicans. So for you audience members from around the world and around the country, when you think of California, you think of California as strictly Democratic, and it is majority Democratic. And it's going to probably go Democrat in the presidential race in the general. But there are pockets where a lot of Republicans are, and Orange County happens to be one of those pockets. So he's speaking in Orange County, California, just south of L.A. And the protests outside were tremendous. And this is a Trump presidency where you have these types of protests. But you also got to remember where Trump came from. Trump is the result. He's the Frankenstein monster that Mitch McConnell and the Tea Party and all of those other Republican lawmakers created when they decided that they wanted to, by any means necessary, shoot down, for lack of a better term, I shouldn't say shoot down, but I should say delegitimize President Obama. He is their Frankenstein monster that's gotten out of control, and they can't do anything with him because part of him doesn't fit their orthodoxy, and they can't do anything with him. I blame a lot of this stuff on the current Republican leadership in Congress, especially Mitch McConnell, who's out of Kentucky. Now, and I've said this before on the show, there was times back when President Obama was running for president that Hillary Clinton went off base and the Clintons went off base, but they eventually got back in line, and then everyone, because of the popularity of President Obama, really supported him. But one of the first things that the Republican leader, Mitch McConnell, said once President Obama was elected into office is that they were going to do whatever they could to make him a first-term president, whatever they could. And then just for the simple fact that he was the first African-American president, the first of any minority is going to get it, meaning that those people who are unevolved and not willing to accept a minority as their president, they're going to be more vocal than ever. But because of people like Mitch McConnell not crushing that and falling in behind the president, expressing his legitimacy, although you can disagree, but let there be no mistake that yes, he was born American. If he weren't American, then he would not have been allowed to become president, because there are FBI background checks on all of us. Every one of us that has any sort of succession to be a president of the United States had to go through some sort of federal background check. And if it came out that he was not eligible for the presidency, he would have been told a long time ago, and he would not have been on the ticket. They all know that. Same thing from Mitch McConnell to John Boehner to Nancy Pelosi. Anyone that's in that line of succession to be the president of the United States, trust me, they have everything in their background picked out, vetted, researched, confirmed, so they know that he was a president that he was a citizen of the United States, but they refuse to acknowledge that, so they let this thing fester. When this thing festered and started off as Tea Party, whatever, it had a racist element to it that they did not quiet down. To his credit, the only person that kind of quieted down during the first Obama presidential run was John McCain, when the woman said that something about President Obama being an Arab, and there's nothing wrong with being an Arab, but he's not. And Senator McCain told her no, that she was wrong. The Republican leadership didn't want to do that. So then, next thing you know, Tea Party gets stronger. It gets too strong for the Republican Party. And then people like Ted Cruz get into office. People like Marco Rubio get into office. All Tea Party back. And you see what happened once Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio got into office, especially Ted Cruz. He has no friends in Congress because of his bullheadedness, his inability to get along with others, and he wears it as a badge of honor. Anyway, all that being said, you got Donald Trump coming along with the whole birther movement. An idiot, a true idiot to say that. And no one in Congress, for the most part, on the Republican side, especially the leadership, just came on and said, no, this is wrong. They just let it fester. And Donald Trump has a level of celebrity. So now it gets to a point where his celebrity has taken over. He's more popular than Mitch McConnell will ever be. He's more charismatic, even though he has weird hair. He's more charismatic than any of these Republican candidates. He actually has some common sense points that he likes to make, where he's not just walking the straight, strict Republican line in regards to Planned Parenthood. Like I said, in regards to the outflow of jobs and factories and things of that sort. And he has his business acumen and his business experience that he can tout. So he's legit. He's legit. I hate to say it, but it's true. He's legit. So all that being said, he is the vast majority of the people in the United States, I believe, are Democratic. It's just a matter of turnout. Usually when turnout is greater, the Democrats benefit. It's just the way it works. Just demographically, more people are Democrats than there are Republicans. So he's a minority. Then within the Republican Party, there's a splinter. There's a fracture. There's the Trump Republicans, and then there's the establishment Republicans and things of that sort. And he's the majority of that group. But it's still a splinter. So he's the majority of a very small minority. But don't think for a second that he can't win. People need to get out and vote. If you haven't voted in the past, you had better be sure you get out this year. If you haven't registered, make sure you're registered to vote. As a matter of fact, this coming Sunday at 2 o'clock in Manhattan Beach, there's a delegate election where we select our delegates for the state of California. These are the people that are going to go to, I believe it's Philadelphia, to help choose our next Democratic candidate. And we, at this point, it's going to be Hillary. But we need to vote for our delegates. And you need to show up in Manhattan Beach, and you can look at my Facebook post to see exactly where it is in Manhattan Beach. And maybe I need to look it up right now. Bear with me. And you need to vote for Courtney LeBeau. She's going to make a fantastic delegate, and I have it on my Facebook page. I'm going to look it up right now to let you know exactly where you need to go to vote for this. And it's important. Who you choose as your delegate is important. And you hear about it in the news all day. You hear about the delegate race. And the address is this coming Sunday at 2 p.m. at 1829 North Sepulveda Boulevard in Manhattan Beach, California, 90266. Go and check out Courtney LeBeau. Vote for her for delegate. And especially if you live on the west side of Los Angeles, I think you have to be in District 33, and you have to be a registered Democrat. And so if you live in Beverly Hills, Santa Monica, Marina Del Rey, Manhattan Beach, Redondo Beach, Palisades, Torrance, Rancho Palos Verdes, Brentwood, Malibu, or Calabasas, you need to show. So check out my Facebook post. I have it on there. Courtney's be a fantastic delegate, and she will represent us well. So it's important. Get out there and vote. It's necessary, and or else you could end up with a Mr. Trump as your president. And we don't want that. At least I don't. And people saying, I'm going to move to Canada. You ain't going nowhere. You'll be right here with me crying. I'll probably have a whole lot of content on my show if there were Mr. Trump. So that would probably be good for my show if I had President Trump, because we always have something to complain about, I'm sure, because he'll say something and get somebody killed, and we'll have just plenty of stuff to complain about. But let's hope that we're smarter than that, and we won't allow him to be to go into office. Now, in regards to Hillary, I like Bernie. I myself like Bernie, but Bernie doesn't really have a chance. What I'm hoping is that Bernie has enough of an effect on Hillary's campaign so that the things that he stands for are included in the Democratic platform. The stuff I was talking about earlier tonight about the people within our country that are left behind economically because of, let's say, wealth inequality and lack of education, lack of opportunities. I think Bernie's platform and what he stands for helps us in that regards. Maybe we can't go all the way where everybody's going to college for free and things of that sort, but we can move in a direction that offers more economic opportunity. Said before, we are a capitalistic society. I'm a proud capitalist. Now, with capitalism, there's automatically inequality built in it, and everyone's not going to be the same. It's not even human nature for everyone to be the same. It's not. But the thing about a capitalist society, the way it should be, in my opinion, is that there needs to be avenues for people to jump to the next level. If they, like President Obama says, if they work hard and they play by the rules and they prepare themselves, there should be opportunities for them to jump from one economic level to the next, to better the lifestyles of their families, of their children, of themselves. That only happens through education, lottery, or some sort of extraordinary talent. Let's say it's athletic or something, or you can sing really well and you get a lucky break. But the vast majority of us, if we want that economic ladder to go from point A to point B and continue to rise, it's going to have to be through education. So if the access to a proper education narrows and becomes more obsolete or becomes too expensive to have an adequate education, that means those ladders are going to disappear. And if those ladders disappear, that means there are going to be people that are stuck at a certain level. And that in itself will breed a lot of social problems. And those are things that we don't want. Now, I wanted to get into some of the stuff today in regards to the drone strikes and the adverse effects of the drone strikes, but I don't think I want to have time for that. And this show has been a little heavy, and which is fine. We need that from time to time. And I think this is my first live streaming show on Facebook as well. So this is kind of exciting, and I wish I had a more upbeat show for you. When Woody gets back, Woody's somewhat of my comic relief. So when he gets back, I'm sure he'll lighten my mood because I can get really, really deep. But before I leave, I cannot get off without saying a word of thanks to my sponsor, Javago Watches. Javago, go to www.javago.com. Javago Watches, fine timepieces made in men's and women's styles, and go check them out. The best thing to do is to go to the site, check out the style that you like, and then from there go to Amazon and choose that on Amazon, and you can usually get it at a discount. So go to Javago Watches, and thank you so much for your support, Javago. I'm going to sign off in just a minute. I wanted to say thank you guys so much for last week's show. Was a break from the norm. Last week's show, I'm still shook up over my boy Prince passing away, and last week's show was a tribute to Prince, and I got feedback from around the world let me know that they really liked that show, and I liked the show too. I didn't like the reason why we had it, but I liked it. But I thank you for supporting it, and I thank you for supporting this show. The show has been fantastic. It's crazy. If you would like to advertise on the show, drop us a line and let us know. You can reach me at ronnie.frierson@gmail.com, and in the subject line, put in Javago. The subject line, put in focus, so I know what you're reaching me about. But other than that, thank you so much for your time, and we will be back at our regularly scheduled hour next week, Friday, 5 o'clock on UBN Network. Focus with Ron Frierson signing off. Thank you. Have a good weekend.